Oh, I didn't see the animation come on. Hey, everybody. You know we're live when I'm screwing it up. This is Dawn Zoldi, your CEO of P3 Tech Consulting and your host for this month's Full Crew. We are focusing on UAS traffic management, or UTM, this digital infrastructure that's going to control that lower level airspace and keep us all organized and safe. We've got some amazing folks on the show today to talk about this, each one and their companies in their own right, doing something unique in the space, who have selected articles that will, generate some conversation about where we are today. So I'm going to go ahead and first thank our sponsors, and then I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves briefly. So today's sponsors, and we've got a lot of them, guys, because the full crew's been on the road quite a bit. Me personally, almost like 2 to 3 weeks a month for this whole entire fall. And these companies supported our live streams from those various events. So we have UAS Strategic, Clarify Consulting, End State Solutions, Grand Sky, True Weather Solutions, Airspace Link, Metis Technologies, Arium Analytics, and Caresoft is actually sponsoring our upcoming Space Power Conference in December. So thank you all. This wouldn't be possible without you. And without further ado, let's go around the horn in no particular order. I'm going to start with Colby Free from Airspace Link.
Hey, it's good to see you, Don, and thanks for everybody joining us here today. Really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedules to stop by, say hello, and join the conversation. Colby Free, VP of Product for Airspace Link. Short of it is, my job is to work with organizations to get a better understanding of what they need to integrate drones into their organizations and flying more frequently, safely, and legally, and in harmony with their communities, essentially enabling them with what they need to be able to do just that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we're going to talk more, obviously. They just had an amazing event, collaborative event in Detroit, Michigan. I had the opportunity to attend. Really cool stuff happening up there. Let's go with Omer Briller from Highlander.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depends where you are. Excited to be on the show. My name is Omer Briller. It's like Homer Simpson without the age. That's why I tell everyone. I'm the VP product in Highlander. I'm also responsible for projects that are running globally around the world. I'm coming from a background of aviation, where I spent more than a decade in the Air Force. After that, I was worked in a global company that harnessed technology, mostly out of the military world, but taking the technology and changing it into commercial aviation with compliance regulation, which is very interesting. Following that, a few startups along the way, B2C, product positions, and now I'm here pushing the ecosystem forward.
And Omer is actually coming to us from Israel. Is that right? Is that where you're dialing in from right now?
Exactly. Yes.
And that's where Highlander is based. So thank you. Yeah. This is truly global. And speaking of global, we've got Samuel Salamao. He is the co-founder of Speedbird Aero, headquarters now not only in Sao Paulo, Brazil, but also in Portugal. So great to have you on the show, Samuel.
Hello, Don. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here with Omer, with Colby, and well, I'm responsible for the technology and innovation at Speedbird. And my background is mostly in software development, systems development, especially in high regulated environments like medical field, telemedicine, and aviation. So I'm really glad to be here.
We've had your co-founder Emmanuel Quillo on the show multiple times. The Dawn of Autonomy. I've written articles about what you're doing and your venture together in the background. So really cool how you guys met, and like you said, in the medical field, and now Speedbird Aero. Yeah, we're going to hear so much more about this in a second. Okay, so let's go ahead right into that first article. We'll go ahead and rule that. And this is one that I believe is the one that, who picked this one? I can't see it. I'm doing so great today, guys. You have to.
Someone.
All right, Mike's typing, my producer.
Yeah, that's my
All right,
article.
this is the birds one. Okay, this is the one that Samuel. You picked this one. So tell us what this article is, and why did you pick it?
Okay. Well, it's very interesting because this article have many things and stories behind it. So it talks about birds, which is consortiums like Highlander, Speedbird, and Kindu from Israel. We got together and we founded Birds in Brazil, which is a joint venture. Very, you know, it works specifically for surveillance, for security, and the idea is to provide UTM, like mission control for surveillance for the Army, for the Air Force, for anyone or any company in South America that would like to have this cutting-edge technology. And this is one part of the article. The other part, it talks about the Brazilian UTM project, which is, it's called BRUTM. So the Air Force in Brazil, they had this idea of, instead of just laying down a set of regulation that the industry have to follow, the Air Force just brought together, right? The Air Force brought together the whole industry, like many players in aviation and drones, to write this down together. So they want to hear the industry, they want to know the hurdles. So they really would like to have a regulation for airspace control, for a managed airspace control, that has the industry together. So, and it's a very nice project that's happening down here in South America. And the main reason for this article is really to talk about all the successes that Highlander had in the whole world when it brings UTM operations safely, and how with Birds now in Brazil, we will be working together to, participate in this whole project as a very strong partnership to bring everything we have learned so far in the field, so the regulators can write this to benefit the whole industry.
So Samuel, I have a quick question before we kind of go around the horn and get everybody else's thoughts and comments and questions. BIRDS is an acronym, right? It's like the Brazil, Israel. What does it stand for again? I'm sorry.
Oh, we were like really think about this when we were talking about the name, but the idea is like a Brazil, Israel drone initiative, something like that, and services at the end. So we were just trying to see how we could have a name that would express ourselves as companies that work together in the drone industry. And the Bird's name, it fit really well. So I think it was the right choice.
No, I think so too. And just so everybody out there that may not be familiar with the Brazilian Civil Aviation Authority and the airspace and how all that works, isn't it true that the Air Force down there actually controls the airspace?
That's correct. In Brazil, it's a little bit different from the United States, where you have the FAA that manages everything. In Brazil, we have ANAC, which is the Civil Aviation Authority, and we have the DSEA, right, which is it's like Airspace Department Control, if I translate that to English. But the DSEA entity is the Air Force. So the Air Force manages the access to the airspace, and ANAC, it's another entity. It will deal with equipment certification, aircraft certification, and pilot certification. So it's separate in Brazil. It's something similar to the Europe when you have the Aero control that's it will deal with the access to the airspace, but it's kind of similar, but different from the FAA.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So I'm going to go to you, Omer, because obviously this article mentions your company, a collaboration with Speedbird and Can-Do Drones, which is also from a company that is also from Israel. You guys decided to bond together, focus on the security use case in Brazil and Latin America. Tell us, your thoughts on this article and how that's all going.
So
Yes.
first of all, we couldn't find better partners for this journey to do together in this project. So thank you, Samuel, and also for Candu. So basically, we took the expertise that we have through managing UTM on a national-wide scale, together with the Speedbird, together with Candu, that are truly professional operators, and try to give and suggested to go on this project and to initiate the integration in Brazil. What I think is most interesting about the article is that we can see that on a national scale, there are some countries that are more advanced than others. It's becoming something that everyone is looking at. There is an understanding, a little bit of maturity around nations and countries that drones are here, and it's UTM is probably the answer they need in order to understand how to go forward in this space. The space is amazing and is enormous, and eventually it's all about safety. Regarding security and other applications that drones can do, we're all familiar with drones and their capabilities and applications. I think the majority of concepts and applications and operational use, when also trying to use BVLOS operations and autonomous operations that are spiking right now, it starts with security of facilities, industrial, and public safety. So I understand the article, and I think it emphasizes correctly all the things, and it's exciting.
Well, you know, I was actually, Omer, just at the Global UTM Association, GUTMA, had their Harmonized Skies event at the Dallas-Fort Worth Key Site area here in the United States. People came from all over the world to this event. It was actually quite excellent. A handful of companies, kind of working on real-world operations. And what I found the most interesting was the public safety angle. So they had real-world drone deliveries occurring, deconflicting with security patrols, essentially, from law enforcement in this one particular neighborhood. We got to see that live. We got to see how they deconflicted in action. And really they're talking about the next steps being that airspace prioritization. In other words, when there's a true emergency and public safety needs to clear the space and the delivery people need to get out of the way, as an example, how does that work? And that is something that is very much kind of still underway. And I think that's a great segue to get Colby in the conversation, because, Airspace Link is working with communities on that digital infrastructure and backbone to put out alerts, as one example, when there's something happening in the airspace or on the ground that everybody needs to be aware of, push that out to the operators, to pilots, to government agencies, law enforcement. So Colby, as you're listening to this, and I know you also have some partners in Latin America. You're working with Aerial Loop in Detroit, and they're from Ecuador. I know you've been down to South America as well. Tell me your thoughts on this piece.
Yeah, so, one of the reasons why we picked the article that we did wasn't just because it had a provocative title, but it really kind of illustrated our approach when it comes to UTM.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. We're going to get to your article shortly, but I want to focus on this kind of birds, Brazilian, Israel connection happening in Brazil, and that article and your thoughts on that kind of more broadly.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is to recognize that there's a lot of efforts going on globally when it comes to advancing UTM and ultimately advancing autonomy and addressing some of those challenges that are associated with operating safely, under different types of regulatory constructs. Like we were just talking about how in Brazil, it's the military that essentially is responsible for that airspace. Well, that often draws us into why is that? What can we learn from it? And how can we apply that to some of the things that we're doing in the United States, which is one of the reasons why we're working with operators abroad and beyond our domestic footprint.
Speaking of what's happening globally, GUTMA did announce at their event, they're actually going to be publishing in December a global UTM readiness index, essentially. and they're kind of giving a scorecard to countries around the world on different facets of UTM and kind of where those countries are on the spectrum. So I'm really looking forward to reading that and seeing, what at least they believe where people stand. I don't also want to forget our fans out there. We've got a super fan jumping in the chat. As always, Mark Ganung, he is from the Nevada test site here in the United States. We love Mark. He's been in fact, Mark was on our show last month for R&D month. So if you all missed that, go back and watch it. It was a great, great show. Thanks for dialing in, Mark, and for everybody else out there. So really great stuff happening in Brazil and leveraging, what Highlander and Can-Do bring to the table. By the way, for those that don't know, my relationship with Highlander goes back a couple years. Really fun fact. There's a conference called EDGE, and it's run by the Government Business Executive Forum. And about 2 years ago, I did a segment on a Saturday morning on Lady Gaga's stage in Las Vegas in all its glory. And I was able to fly a drone from the stage in Las Vegas in Tel Aviv using their system. And that was like the coolest thing because we did it live on this ginormous Jumbotron behind me. Alon Abelson, your CEO at Highlander, was on the screen. Also, L-Site was involved in that particular demo. So really, really love the stuff you guys are doing. And Samuel, I want to give it to you just for a real quick, summary to kind of any closing thoughts you have on your article before we go to the next one.
Yes. Well, I would like to get some words from Omer, like countries that are more advanced than others. I think that this article is about the BR UTM, but it brings everything that Birds is doing. But I think the key thought here is that the regulators, they must be together with the industry. So we must work together to have this done. So it would benefit. I mean, I think that's the main idea for the article that I would like to bring here to the show for you, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. And, maybe that is actually a good segue. I think we're going to the Singapore article next. And I think, Omer, you can maybe incorporate some of your thoughts on how other places around the world that you're doing business in that you've witnessed, are doing with regard to UTM. So let's go ahead.
I just want to add before we go to Singapore article.
Yeah.
That I think the BR UTM article is a great example of collaboration, meaning that a UTM service or the UTM infrastructure that you need to do on a national-wide scale is complicated. Sometimes you need professional people with expertise and different kinds of companies to come together in order to take that forward. And I think the Birds is a great example of taking different kinds of companies with specials with professional level and together with the regulators and the Air Force, bring this to life. And I think it might be a good opportunity for also other countries to do that. So it's not a one company's job. It's a collaboration of different kinds of companies. And I think if something to take, that's the key point.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of tag on to that, and as Samuel said, with regulators as well. I mean, the fact that you're all working together and then the regulators are looking, I mean, basically you guys are the equivalent of the key site. You are an operational evaluation. You are doing real things in the real world and your regulators are watching. You're all coming to the table then to draft what the regulation should be. So, it's awesome to see this happening, not just in Dallas, but also in Brazil and other places around the world. So great way to jump to the next piece. We're going to talk about Singapore now. Singapore is one of those places I've been following for a while. It's so advanced when it comes to adopting drones and autonomous technologies. They've been working on this for a very long time. Omer, this is your article, so I'm going to go ahead and let you explain what this is all about and why you chose it.
So first of all, I selected this article because as a UTM service provider, we love to see national governments recognizing that drones are permanent and growing and present in the airspace. The article speaks about a requirement, a legislation that the Singapore government or flying authority, aviation authority made, that until the end of next year, every drone that's flying that is relevant will have a broadcast read capability, meaning broadcast the telemetry to the network. And I think besides the fact that drones are here to stay, I think it's a good sign of coming of age, a maturity in the industry, maturity in the ecosystem, that the first cornerstone of providing a UTM or providing safety and providing understanding of the airspace is a broadcast read. It's to be able to see the drones, to see the UAS, to see what's flying around. They are everywhere, but we don't see them. And I think an understanding from the government that that's the next step is important and crucial. Personally, I want to believe, and I think that more than a few nations needs to do that. It's something that needs to be much more faster and needs to be much more wide range, and all other nations, countries, there's no reason why they shouldn't do it. That's why I like this article. And I think the next step is understanding by the Singapore government that UTM is the next phase or a requirement that will be available in Singapore shortly after. And again, to be connected to the network, to be able to see, it's the first step to manage the airspace. You cannot manage stuff or drones, UAVs, vehicles that you cannot see. So I think that's why I chose this article, because it's a first step. There's not a lot of countries. There's a law in the United States. There's also in Europe, Singapore, maybe Japan. But other than that, I think the rest of the world is behind. And that's personally, I think the step forward is to be able to adopt much more, much faster. And I wish we could see articles like that, more articles like that on LinkedIn and other magazines in the near future.
Yeah, so just to, again, for the audience, if you couldn't like read the title of that article, it's really about remote identification. What we're talking about here, this broadcast capability, very similar to what we have now in the United States as a requirement. And as Omer said, in Europe, Singapore not only is requiring this now, but what I loved about it, Omer, is they're actually subsidizing the upgrade of drones or the purchase of modules for folks if they register and they do it within the next year. Otherwise, hey, it's on you guys, right? Like, I love that approach. And so I'm going to go to Colby next, actually, because what we're talking about here is like basically digital conspicuity, right? So when you think about UTM, you think about safety, you think about security. This idea of conspicuity is really crucial. Remote ID is not, especially a broadcast version, is not the be all and end all, but it's a component, right? It's something. So, Colby, I know your AirHub portal can ingest remote ID information. Tell us your thoughts on how that's going, and not only that, but like, what your thoughts are on Omer's comment about the lack globally of such a requirement for remote ID. And I think we just lost your. No, there we go. All right. Okay. I lost your face. It was probably me, but you're still there. And so go ahead, Colby, over to you.
Yeah, so I agree with what Omer is saying is that having a better understanding of the activity in the airspace is critical, and being able to manage that activity and ensure safety, not only in terms of the UAS that's operating in that airspace through perhaps different types of regulatory measures that have been put in place, such as remote ID, but also other means, so that could be different types of aircraft surveillance, ADSB. So now you have an understanding of the location of the UAS and any crewed aircraft that may be sharing that airspace. that can factor into ensuring separation, right, through operational decision making when you have that situational awareness. So it is a very important part of what it is that Airspace Link is looking to bring to the table to ensure, like, I love that saying, that the harmonized skies and situational awareness of airspace activity is absolutely a fundamental. So share that with Omar for certain.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, Samuel, if my memory serves correctly, Manuel from Speedbird was on part of our Law Tech Connect workshop last year at Exponential. By the way, everybody, you can watch that panel. It was called State of the States. It's accessible on my YouTube channel as well as on my website, P3 Tech. It was the Global Drone Regulations panel, and we did a quick round of, hey, everybody, what's going on with remote ID in your country? And if I recall correctly, Manuel said, in Brazil, we don't have such a requirement.
Well, for now.
Right now? Okay. Well, it's surprising too, because like talking about your Air Force is, the ones who really monitor and control that airspace, to not have that, which seems to be a pretty significant security requirement.
Yes. Yeah. So with the BR UTM project, that will be mandated. And they will start with the net ID, with the network-based remote ID, not the broadcast for now.
Okay, not broadcast. All right, so this has been a big issue, right, in the U.S. When our initial rule, remote ID rule, the notice of public rulemaking, that initial draft came out for public comment, there was discussion of a network option. And then when the final rule was published, it was broadcast only, and a lot of people were surprised, quite frankly. Omer, I'd like to send this back to you, since you kind of dwell in both worlds, broadcast and network remote ID. I assume you've seen both in action. What are your thoughts on the benefits of having that network option?
So first of all, I believe that network is much, much better than broadcast. And the key factor for that is that the network ID works better and in larger areas, meaning that when you think about BVLOS operation and autonomous operation, which, by the way, there's 20% growth of BVLOS operation every year in the upcoming years. There's no other way of doing that without network identification. Broadcast, with all the trials that we did and experiments and trying to understand and how it looks in the UTM with different drones and with different operators, the signal and the telemetry and the visibility of the drone usually disappears after about 100, 200 meters out from the controller, from the operator. But when you look into the future and with applications of BVLOS operations and delivery, there's no other way other than network identification. And until everyone will have network identification, some of the traffic that we'll see on the UTM will disappear sometime, in some point of time when they're flying. And that's a shame, because then you don't see them and you cannot manage them. And it's, I think, if the purpose is to see and manage the airspace, then you cannot do it. Network, I believe, is much better. It's the future. It will be integrated in every drone in the future. And there will be other technologies that will probably provide that capabilities. I think broadcast is like a middle step towards that vision. So definitely I'm for a network identification.
Okay, very, excellent. That's what I heard too. And Colby, I want to toss this back to you. I don't know if you had the opportunity at the FAA Drone and AAM Symposium in July, which I know you attended, and Michael Helander, your CEO, and some others from your group. Were you able to sit in that remote ID session or any of them? Because I heard it almost came to fisticuffs. I don't know what was going on there, but I heard it got pretty heated, that it just wasn't working out, especially for public safety. Whether they just didn't have the money to buy the equipment, people just weren't complying with it. I think we pushed that compliance date a couple times in terms of not only manufacturers, but then the remote pilots themselves, that have the equipment on the drones. I don't know if you have any insights or feedback on that, but that was what I had heard. I was actually doing a UTM panel in the other room at the exact same time when that was happening. So I'm just curious if you got any word on that.
I think I was in the same panel that you're in, but I did hear like probably, like thunder over the horizon, and heard a little bit of scuttlebutt coming out of that. But one of the things that we've seen that I think is kind of an opportunity for the community to be able to work together is getting a better understanding of what the purpose of the remote ID is, and how that relates to the organization, like at the state and local level, and their responsibility, or the opportunity for them to be able to leverage that to be able to address some of the safety and security concerns that may be associated with UAS operating within their community. And I think more than anything is just opening up that dialogue between all the different stakeholders, especially the local government stakeholders, and understanding what remote ID is, what they can do to be able to leverage that regulation and those who are compliant with that regulation, and how it applies to their jurisdictional authority and responsibility. That's probably one of the biggest things. It's kind of one of those deals, like you hear the saying, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there, it doesn't really make a sound. It's similar to broadcast remote ID. Is the drone can be broadcasting, but if the infrastructure isn't in place to be able to receive that, is what's the value that you can get out of it? And I think that as we've been engaging those local governments, we've been helping them understand what it really truly is and how it applies to their community concerns, and what they can do to make an investment in the infrastructure that's necessary to be able to leverage it in its state. Now, I do agree with Omar. There's kind of additional steps that we foresee into the future that will likely take us into network. But for now, it's for us, it's, let's take a look at, what the purpose of the regulation is, enable those organizations to be able to apply, again, the compliance of those who are operating within their communities, and enable them with the infrastructure and the knowledge in terms of how to leverage that towards managing some of the concerns they may have.
Yeah. I'm gonna go all in with Omer, because I agree with you 100%. This is about beyond visual line of sight. This is not necessarily about security. And the reason why I'm going to really go all in on that is because, at least in the US, our local law enforcement, they have no authority to do anything, if really, other than go up to a drone pilot and say, hey, you're either annoying somebody or you shouldn't be here. But it's really the FAA that has that jurisdiction, to use Colby's words and that kind of legalistic term. Our law enforcement doesn't have counter UAS authority. So when you think about what broadcast remote ID was supposed to be, it really, I think, fell short on so many different levels here in the US. I'm glad to see that Brazil is looking at remote ID, that they're looking to do network right from the get-go, that it ties directly into UTM. 100% on board with that. Love that. And, obviously Singapore's next. So, we're kind of hearing word that the FAA is going to put out this Part 108, beyond visual line of sight rule. I know it's got a longer name, and I apologize for not memorizing it. We're still hoping it's like before the next administration comes into play, because if not, it's just going to be huge delays, bigger problems for, I think, the industry, at least here in the US. But, I think network's going to be a part of that. Colby, you alluded to it. So great stuff. Thanks for bringing this article to the table, Omer. I think to see what's happening in Asia, because, we don't always know, like, not every country is super transparent about what they're doing. Some are out there chirping, but can you even trust what they're saying is true? I don't know. So Singapore, though, doing great stuff, and great to hear they're adopting this remote ID and subsidizing people to get up to speed. I love that. And boy, I wish other governments could take a page out of their playbook in that regard. Yes, it's money, but I think money well spent. Real quick, before we go to our final article, I wanted to take this second to once again thank our sponsors for making all this possible. UAS Strategic, Clarify Consulting, End State Solutions, Grand Sky, True Weather Solutions, Airspace Link, Metis Technologies, Arium Analytics, and Carosoft. I mean, the support for our crew this year has been almost like overwhelming and eye-watering, just amazing. And we're looking forward to a really big 2025. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. And by the way, this is kind of the end of the show for 2024. Surprise, surprise, everybody. We're not going to do a December holiday roll-up or anything like that. We're just going to forge straight ahead into 2025 full speed after this one and give everybody a break for the holidays that are coming up very quickly. All right, so let's go ahead to that last and final article. Now, Colby, this is yours. You picked this one. Tell us about what this is and why you picked it.
Yeah, so I guess I was really excited to be able to share this. Apologies for jumping in a little bit ahead of the scheduled agenda there. But yeah, so we didn't pick this just for its provocative title.
Can you read the title for those that can't see it?
Yeah, you bet. UAS industry standards, accelerating or delaying the future, right? Yeah. What's going on? So one of the things that we like to do as a company is really to try to build the full context of the capabilities that we put into our product and the services that we provide. And for UTM, that's no different. You know, first and foremost, if you have conversations with the FAA as it relates to the Part 108 rulemaking, you can hear this message and this philosophy or this strategy that they're taking about leveraging standards working groups and standards bodies for being able to further define how some of those regulations are going to be met. Right? What is it that you need to put in place in order to be compliant? UTM is no exception to that. And so the ASTM group, let's see, it's the Mark Blanks on the he's the ASTM F-38 chair. So they've really taken that on to help better define what UTM is, the different capabilities and methodologies that are associated with being able to provide that as a supplier. Airspace Link is positioning to do just that. And so we participate in this working group. And what you're seeing is how this standard is evolving, and we believe it's of significant benefit on account of the fact that it's giving guidance to industry about what they need to do in terms of the capabilities that can provide this as a service to those who are looking to operate beyond visual line of sight. And we're all waiting for that. Like, this is my Christmas gift, is that we're going to see that Part 108 NPRM, right? We're all kind of waiting for it.
Wrapped up in a bow. And look, if I'm a betting person, it's going to be on Christmas Eve, because that's when they dropped remote ID, if I recall.
They did, and I remember that. I was reading through that next to the fireplace there. I kid you not, like this is a window into where my head is at. But anyways, we're excited to see that, and we believe that we're predicting essentially that they're going to be pointing over to the standards body and UTM in some cases for BB loss operation will be a means of being able to ensure safety, right, when it comes to beyond a high volume, beyond visual line of sight in congested areas, right? That's our best guess. But the point of this article is that it gives us a better understanding of how the FAA is viewing this. And then when you start dipping into the ASTM standards working group and reading all that information, it's giving you a better understanding of what we can be doing as a business to be able to support these types of operations when it comes to beyond visual line of sight. The one thing I really want to highlight here, especially for those, Don, you hit it, we see, like up in the key site, there's a lot of commercial activity when it comes to BB loss operations, high scale, high volume BB loss operations that are starting to call for UTM. But what about those local government organizations? What about those commercial organizations that don't have the commercial and the capital wherewithal to be able to build their own UTM? how do you ensure that they have access to the skies to be able to support the beyond visual line of sight operations? And that's where the standards working group is so important. It enables companies like ours to be able to follow those standards as a guide in developing the technology that can enable all operators, right, to be able to use that airspace when it comes to BV loss operations. Fingers crossed through this organizational certification model that we're hearing is baked into the Part 108 rulemaking.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, we've got another, not only a fan, a patron, someone who's been on the show and other shows multiple times. Don, the Weather Don Bershoff, is out there chirping about the ASTM weather standard. Now, Don was really spearheaded that effort. It went through with flying colors, and we're just waiting for the FAA to memorialize that in an advisory circular. Hopefully, maybe some of that will be in Part 108. Who knows? But of course, Don is reaching out to Samuel and Omer and saying, let's bring to Brazil and Israel real precision weather services to UTM and operators. So Don, we love you. The guy just never sleeps. He never rests. He's always spreading the weather word to everybody. But Colby, this is an interesting article too, because what I thought, and this was, I think, written by Mark Blanks, he used to be with, was it Virginia Tech, right? The MAP, the Mid-Atlantic test site, right? Talking about risk-based versus performance-based. And, honestly, this was brought up at the GUTMA thing. And I'm like, and one of the speakers, and I can't recall who it was, and it raised a great point, like performance-based regulations incorporate risk. Okay, so it's not a dichotomy here. It's performance-based versus prescriptive regulations that tell you you will do A, B, C, and D exactly, versus
Correct.
Here's the performance standard that you need to meet. We're not going to tell you how to do it, but we'll just tell you, if you can meet that bar. And now in some respects there's goodness to that. Some it's like, bring me a rock, I'll tell you if it's the right rock. And I think that's where there's some frustration in the industry if there's not full transparency on why people are getting certain approvals, like in the US, the NTAP, the near-term approval process for UTM. Why are some successful? Why are others not? I don't know. Omer, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because you are doing UTM, you're doing it globally. You're working with SORA, whether in Europe, I believe Israel also has adopted the JARUS model in terms of operational model in terms of drone operations beyond visual line of sight, etc. Is this conversation about performance and risk-based versus prescriptive, is that even important, or what's your view on that?
So I just want to say that when as a product, someone who deals with technology and advanced technology and solutions, working in a startup, the technology always advances much faster than the regulatory affairs and compliance.
Oh, absolutely.
And you sometimes get frustrated from it. Eventually, in the end, it's all about safety. And what's interesting in the article, and I think that is important, is that when regulatory agencies are highly motivated to find ways to a scalable operation, that creates an edge for the country, an edge for the nation. For example, the BR-UTM is a good example. Still, in other places that we encounter around the globe, sometimes the agencies are much slower in adapting and understanding the technology and the capabilities and the pace that you can go forward in this space. And then you're held back a bit. So I wish a lot more agencies would be open-minded and highly motivated to do so. And together with the companies that are professional in what they're doing, there's a way to go forward. So I really like the article Colby sent.
Well, and standards bodies like ASTM, they're industry consensus, right? Agreed upon best practices, essentially. And, to the extent that civil aviation authorities or those bodies that regulate the airspace can look to those and incorporate those without being overly prescriptive, maybe that is a win. I don't know. Samuel, what do you think? Because you're going to be highly involved now in this Brazilian process of what that regulation should look like as you work with Highlander and Can-Do on this most recent Birds project. What are your thoughts?
Yes, well, we've been flying beyond visual line of sight like since day one, like following many different regulations. Well, when you think about the other countries, how they are tackling this, most of them are relying in ASTM standards. So we have the F-3411, and we have the USS provider, also ASTM documentation that explains how to implement something like that, at least gives you the guidance to do that. So the countries that we operate, they are following those standards. Brazil, the same. So that gives us an idea about how urbanizing it would be in the near future. So hopefully the countries, other countries, also the European agencies, they follow these standards. But sometimes I like to say that these people that write the regulations, sometimes they need to be in the field, go there, see how drones fly, see how operators do it, right? And see how it works, because maybe you are just there in an office, in a chair, writing a text and have no idea what's going on out there. So that's why I keep saying, if we are not together, the industry and regulators, that could delay, the deliveries, that could delay other projects to come alive, like Colby said in the title. It's delay or it's advancing, so it depends. I think that's the way we must try to push this work together with them so we can have these standards harmonized and done for everybody to implement and make it happen.
No, I love what you said there about kind of getting out of your chair and out of the office and into the field. My buddy Ron Leach from Leach Consulting Strategic always talks about that. Like, another day in the field is better than a day in the office, like on his LinkedIn post, but it's true. And, as a former Air Force JAG and advisor, I would tell all the people that work for me, like, don't write a policy unless you know what your client is. Like, you need to go out and see the operations. You can't sit in a back room writing stuff. You gotta know what it's all about. And, the one thing I'll say about that too, we've been talking about standards. I do want to put two plugs in. One is for GUTMA. So GUTMA, not only took some of those standards, but then got really tactical on terms of what is that information sharing agreement? What should that look like, right? And so they have like these templates and things like this. So I would commend everybody to check that out. And then the last thing I would say, in terms of that, not only GUTMA, but the Dallas Key site, I'm not saying it's the be all and end all, but I'm saying we can all learn from each other. And they actually created a GitHub site, and they're transparently posting everything up there.
Yep.
So as you guys, if you haven't checked it out in Brazil, in Israel, other places around the world, just check it out and see if this is something that makes sense. It's something, because they are using the standards like Colby referenced and Samuel and Omer. They're using, the best practices from GUTMA, and why reinvent the wheel, if you will, if there's something that's actually working. And it seems to be, knock on wood, working down there. So just throwing that out there for everybody. If you didn't know that GitHub site existed, you can go up and read it. You can read the standards they put together, like how to come on board. There's a whole process they put together. It's pretty rigorous, honestly. So really, really interesting. But I'm gonna send it back to Colby for any final comments on your article, and then I'm going to take a minute or two to close us out today.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on something that Samuel said. I think, and just kind of point to what I believe is a degree of wisdom that the FAA had in terms of their approach with the regulations and pointing to the standards working group. I think what they're doing is trying to open up the door for industry to come in and help define what the path needs to look like to be able to meet those safety concerns that are ultimately associated with the regulations that they're putting in place. And instead of, thinking that they have all the answers, and I think there's a degree of humility that the FAA has in terms of this strategy, they're inviting industry into the standards working group to come in and to be able to bring those insights from the field, right? And especially those who have stake in the game, they can kind of come in and help guide, the best practices and the approaches and the technical solutions and whatnots to be able to meet those regulatory concerns, which I think is tremendous. Airspace Link has significantly benefited from participating in that. So just to piggyback on what you're saying, Don, is look, those standards working groups, I've never been on a call where there hasn't been an ask for people to come in and participate and help support these processes. It's absolutely worth the investment to participate, just not only for the insights that you get from what is to come and or maybe how you can approach providing these solutions and services, but also to start building those relationships and learn from your peers, right? It's a fantastic thing to participate in there. So a little bit of a plug for any of you ASTM advocates out there. The door is open to start participating and joining in that effort. And again, opening up the skies for everybody.
I love that. It's a great way to close it out. And before I make my closing comments here for the year, I'd like to just go around the horn super quick and have everybody tell the audience how they can learn more about your efforts, your company's efforts, and how they can reach you. So Samuel, I'll go ahead and start with you. Okay.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Don and Colby, Omer. Great conversation here, guys. So if you want to know more about Speedbird, you can follow in social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, also our website, speedbird.aero. And feel free to contact me if you want. I'm always open to have many peers that thinks together. Like, I love to be here with you guys who have we are in the same industry, have the same thoughts, same feelings. And it's great to share with all of you. And I really wish you have a blessed end of the year.
Thank you so much. Omer, you're next.
The same as what Samuel said, but you can contact us at highlander.io. You can find all our solutions. You can contact us, social media, etc. We'll be happy to talk, to integrate, to create corporations and partnerships. We're here.
And by the way, I just saw your announcement that you've landed a project in Canada. So congratulations. I was just in Ottawa with the Aero Evolution Association of Canada, and their annual conference is amazing. So congrats on that. Looking forward to seeing more great things out of both your companies as well as Airspace Link. So we'll close it out with Colby. If you could tell them a little bit about how to reach you and Airspace Link.
You bet. You can find us at airspacelink.com. That's Airspace Link, all one word. Feel free to reach out to me at colby.free, F-R-E-E, at airspacelink.com. We'd love to chat with you. I mean, we welcome conversations about how to integrate drones and bring the capabilities in behind it to be able to scale them within your organization or give you guidance in terms of your organization's responsibilities when it comes to facilitating that in your community. So look forward to hearing from you, and hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving.
All right. And since we're closing out the year, by the way, Don Bershoff is out there saying great discussion. I love what you all are doing. Thank you, Don. Check out tomorrow, our Dawn of Autonomy. Don is going to be on the show. It's the last number 4 of his True Weather Solutions series across the year. His guest will be Ken Stewart from New Air. So really looking forward to that conversation as well. And speaking of kind of closing out the year, once again, thank you, everybody. What a great crew it's been. You know, we really expanded our suite of products, not only this podcast, which we've honed to be like around one theme per 1 month with really an amazing panel of experts. Mark your calendars now for about third week in January. We're going to have a robotics theme month, and we've got Sean Gear from Energy Drone. We've got Todd Basil. He is an attorney with GT Law, and his practice is all around robotics and autonomy. And then we've got Olga Pagoda from Chef Robotics, who is Ukrainian and has been very involved in the efforts in the Ukraine to bring technology there. So I can't wait for that one. I mean, what a great show that's going to be. And we're lining up guests for all next year. Eduardo Morales is out there clapping. Thank you, Eduardo. I do want to say, once again, thanks. We had a number of product releases this year, tons of live streams from various shows that we traveled to. And the one show that I'd love to see a little bit more of next year, if we can, is our leadership podcast, Full Tilt. We actually had Anna Helander from Airspace link on that historically, as well as Manuel. Great legacy shows. If you want to find all of these, you can go to my website now, but I want to announce something here. Technically, it's not going to be announced officially till next week in a press release, but Autonomy Global is the new thing. We are opening up a global digital media website on January 1st, 2025, new year, new hub. It's going to have 15 language plugins, and it's going to be chock full of original content. So all of these podcasts are going to be hung there. We have 15 ambassadors that are experts in their field. They're going to be regular contributors to that site. We've got a number of media and vendor partners. We're going to have events posted there, resources, white papers, Law Tech Connect, all kinds of things. So check it out. Please sign up for my newsletter. You go to p3tech.com, go on newsletter, sign up today, because that newsletter is going to flip and become Autonomy Global News on the 1st of January. And that way you'll be in the know all year long. So really looking forward to that. And thank you again, everybody. Mike is in the background. Mike has been co-hosting this show. We've been tag teaming all year long. Thanks, Mike, for everything you do. Everybody that celebrates Thanksgiving, have a very wonderful Thanksgiving. We are thankful for you. And for those celebrating upcoming holidays at the end of the year, whatever your faith, whatever you celebrate, have a wonderful holiday season. Have a great end to 2024. And we really look forward to a spectacular 2025 together. Until then, the crew is out here.